Welcome to the Healers Café, conversations on health and healing with Dr. Manon.
So welcome to the Healers Café, and today I'm really excited because I have with me Susan Kennard, and she is a spiritual scientist, which I will get you to explain a little bit more, but you've been basically working as a therapist for the last 20 years with a background or trained in psychology and psychotherapy, and your focus is, and your specialization is in PTSD and working with veterans and people who have experienced significant trauma. So I was really excited to work with you because that's also an area that I focus on. And I think it's just amazing to share this work, let people know other ways. And so thank you for accepting this offer.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you for finding me. No, it's great to be here. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you an odd question to start with. I want to know, some people say, that they realize their calling in this kind of field because of they just felt they knew right from the first day. Other people, it takes, a life event or their own pain or trauma. And so, or whatever their situation is. And so I kind of want to go, what made you realize that this was your calling, that this is what you're here to do? So maybe if you could speak to that first.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm going to have a podcast, The Spiritual Awakener. So essentially what you're talking about is, where did your awakening happen, and how did that lead to service and really helping others in service? Well, if we're looking at the science aspect of it first, rather than the spiritual, we look at the science. Well, I was brought up in a family where I had a mother who was on Valium, basically the whole of our young life. And so obviously I had a situation that where I was with an emotionally unavailable parent, even though she was present and my dad was present, actually emotionally quite unavailable. And so I suppose what happened was and I didn't know this at the time, of course, but as time went on, I started to work with children. I started to specialize in psychology of children, and then ended up doing my psychotherapy training in early childhood trauma. And as I worked in child protection for 15 years as a trauma specialist, that led me to do a huge amount of incidental research where I'd seen trends alongside that. So that was my kind of basic story of perhaps why I was led down the path to work with children and the inner child, healing that trauma. But the spiritual aspect of it came around about the same time that I worked in child protection, where I had a spiritual awakening, hence my podcast called The Spiritual Awakener. And essentially, so what happened was I had a friend who took his life, and then came to me a couple of months later. And of course, I was a psychologist, a psychotherapist, I was a scientist, I liked evidence. I was no way into anything, being a medium or anything like that, anything spiritual. I was very cut and dried. So this was quite a shock to me, and obviously very scary as well. So then a few months later, I actually was given a reading and was told everything about this person and how he'd come to visit me, to let him know that life goes on, etc., etc. And by the way, you could be doing this. And I was like totally resistant for ages and ages and ages and ages. And then I started to do transcendental meditation, which led me to really concentrate and open my mind and stay grounded, and my whole world just opened up, literally. So I'd say the spiritual awakening was definitely my friend visiting me and coming to me. That was definitely the spiritual awakening, which led me on that path. And then now, all these years later, I've actually been 30 years as a therapist. All these years later, I incorporate, over the last sort of 12 years, the science and the spiritual. So when I work with trauma, I'm actually given exactly where the trauma was pinpointed and the early aspect of it, and I'm told it and I'm shown it, so like video screens, clairvoyantly, and my guides will tell me, and so then we're able to clear it energetically really quickly. I do light language, I get channeled all this sound healing, so it's on lots and lots of different levels. So depending on who I work with depends on what toolbox, you know, we use. So the PTSD and the trauma, I found a trend and an incidental bit of research that I started getting veterans coming to me through friends of friends of friends, and they said, oh well, if your stuff works with them, would it work with this? And I said, well, we can give it a go. And so at that time I was doing a lot of EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, for anybody who doesn't know, where people tap on certain points of the body and the face. And so I started using EFT with PTSD, and what I noticed very quickly is that all the veterans I worked with had early childhood trauma. So what we were actually doing was working with the early childhood perception of belief that led them to have a predisposition to the raised cortisol and adrenaline, you know, and then looking at the science of it, and many times it was epigenetic. So it was something they'd actually brought in, you know, to this life that wasn't even theirs. So fascinating. And I did that for about 2.5 years working with vets. And it was a fascinating journey. It led me to speak about my research at different conferences. But now I would say what I specialize in is people come to me that seem to be stuck and have tried everything, and they're very, very aware that they need to step forward on their mission here this time, being a soul in a body, having a human experience. And so what I do with them is we work together to release the trauma and the perceptions of belief that stop them from aligning to their mission. So I feel like my mission is to get people on their mission, and the way we do that is by clearing the trauma, because that's held in the field as dust, I suppose, going out to the world. So our vibrational field is beautiful, our heart field, but it has little dusty bits which reflect back, you know, and when we clear up those dusty bits, the outside world looks a better place, and we obviously receive more. There's so much more I could talk about, but really that essentially, in a nutshell, is how the combination of the spiritual and the science and the spiritual came together, because I'm such an evidence girl. Like I like evidence of everything. So when I work individually with people, I teach them how to tell if something's still running in their field or not, because I want to know that that has been cleared. And that's my evidence. That's how I am as the scientist, So if I'd have gone into it not being a scientist, maybe I'd have just gone, that's fine. But I actually like to know. So, and I like people to feel empowered, that they've walked away and they've released that trauma that's within them, and, you know, it's gone. So it's great fun, I'm sure, as your work is. And it's not like work, and I have such a great time with it.
Well, I really I'm super identifying with this, because I too come from a science background, right? So my training, not just left brain and, legal stuff, which was my original training. But I also am a naturopathic, physician. So it's all science. It's all science-based. And it's funny because, as I'm sort of really working on the mission that I have and what I'm putting out in this world, I realized that I discovered a gift that I hear sound in the body, and like literally vibration. And I did not know that that was a gift. I assumed everyone had this. And so I work with the body, but on the body. I have other aspects as well, but it's interesting how, sometimes something happens that just like wakes you up, literally. And then, that's why I appreciate that you're checking what was before, so that that's the empowerment piece. Because if you don't have, the person, it's like too wow, strange, unbelievable. But if they can sort of see before and after and test it, it really, it anchors it much more deeply. So I love that you do
with
that.
the dis-ease, do you find with as well, like if someone has a message in the body, that's how I like to see it, a message in the body that's showing up, when they can actually heal the causal. I trained in meta health and naturopathy many years ago, but meta health, if you heard of it, like where we're looking at the brain, relay, and we're looking at the emotional causal reason metaphysically. And so when you can look at that and say, say for example, skin is usually separation, so I hold the vibration of separation of source, and it's a yes, and then when we clear it, it's a no. It's like, oh my goodness, wow, like my body may still show that skin irritation today in this moment in time, but I've cleared the causal reason of why it's showing it to me. So then it's just literally, that trust, isn't it? And then the body can get on with healing itself beautifully, because it doesn't have to say that message anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you've actually highlighted what, because the skin rush was the symptom. The way that the body communicates, in a sense, to us, the most visible way. And then it's like, now you get to the bottom of why, So what is your, and I don't know if this is something that is podcastable or videoable, but what is the method that you're using now, that you've been sort of guided to help people with this process?
So it will be my channel. I mean, essentially, I created this program called Sparkle to Success, which was born from when I used to teach EFT, and I just couldn't teach it how it was taught. I had to add all of my processes to it, and then it just got too long, the training. So I actually created a new training with all my processes in it. And so now I have an audio program on my website called Sparkle to Success, which is my book that I wrote, my manual of how to do it all, but also what it means. And so I use those processes, but I use a lot of guided inner child processes where we get to really give that child the compassion and the love that they didn't get in that moment. So with the guidance, with the channeling, with the listening, I guide my client how to really feel where that child is, how old they are. We do it really quickly, how old they are, so they don't get in their head, they get in their real heart. And then to heal that child with processes, it's really fun. And then bring that child back in, so that the integration, that child's no longer outside of them saying, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I'm, and clearing entities. So, what I found with shock and trauma is that pretty much all the time, especially with PTSD, is that there is held in there entity and attachment, which is, it's not bad, it just is attached to the fear and the trauma. And so it's not good or bad. So when the trauma is healed, the entity shows itself to me, and we're like, okay, thanks very much for showing creator all that is, take it away, you know, to unconditional love. So essentially, those entities and attachments were serving a purpose, but they no longer serve a purpose. So they then are able to show themselves and leave, doing the job that they did. And anyway, with anything that's hanging around. So it's non-prescriptive really, because I can't really tell you exactly how I would work with someone, because there are so many things that we can use. Yeah. But the main thing is drawing on all of the knowledge, you know, that with our traditional training of knowledge, but also our wisdom from the universe, and trusting wholeheartedly that what is happening is for the highest and best good of that person, and not taking the responsibility for their journey, right, but to allow them to take responsibility for their own healing. So that's kind of, you know, I can't really pinpoint it, but that's kind of how it happens. Sometimes it's inner child, sometimes it's Akashic records, detailing, sometimes it's, you know, really looking at past lives, sometimes it's soul rebirthing, looking at the conception, pregnancy, birth process, and healing all of that coming into the world, you know. And yeah, sometimes it's healing relationships. That's a favorite one. Cutting the ties with forgiveness, with relationships. So there's like, you know, a smorgasbord of ways that we can have fun and clear these things without seeing trauma as, oh my God, that's awful, you know, but actually acknowledging it, but just knowing it's energy. And it is what it is, and that was then. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely one of the aspects, is the re-traumatization, right? That happens because it's there, and the person may be unaware. Yeah. And so, you know, especially if it's like incest or very early childhood trauma. There's no memory. There's no memory, exactly. And just cellular. Exactly. Vibrational. No, and I think that's why counselling doesn't work for many, because not now. I think it used to. I think as a psychologist all those years ago, you know, 30 years ago, I think it worked because that's where we were energetically. But I think energetically now, you know, it just doesn't cut the mustard, does it? It doesn't go in deep enough, because we don't know what we don't know. Right. So how do you, I mean, because it's like such a shift of, you know, of perception. In fact, it's just enlarged perception. But how do you deal with your colleagues that are psychologists? Like what I love them. No, but great. How? But I mean, as in, how does this? Because in a sense, it's like it's hard to explain it if you haven't experienced it. Like all things, it's very hard to communicate the shift that happens when the shift happens, right? So how do you deal with that? Because I mean, that is a definite, you know, and it's at the most stupid level. I call it stupid. It's like, you know, even a paradigm shift from like not taking drugs to doing something naturally. That seems like it should be a really easy shift, right? But it's not. You know, people are very stuck with this. But when you're dealing with the level of treatment that you're talking about, it's not in the books. It's not, I mean, we have ways of trying to explain it, but how do you deal with that? Or, I mean, I know you have. I quite enjoy it, actually. Yeah, tell me. Yes, I came out of the closet a long time ago. There was a time when I'd hide behind being in Harley Street. I don't know if you've heard of it in London, Harley Street. It's a place in London that is kind of medically world renowned, right? Okay. And so I used to have a practice there. So I was in Harley Street, I was a psychologist, I was a psychotherapist, and I did a bit of EFT, right? And I felt like I was hiding behind that because of wanting to be recognized for somebody who I don't know, I suppose I thought perhaps I wouldn't be able to reach people if I was, the spiritual person, even though that's who I was. So when I stepped out of the closet, not in that way, but in the sense of being a spiritual, working spiritually, what I noticed was that I was able to speak 100% my truth. So I worked with a lot of doctors. Sorry about the background noise, children. I worked with a lot of doctors. I worked with a lot of psychologists. I worked with counselors, and a lot of them came and did my courses. So the training that was added to EFT, so they came and did that. And a lot of them use it now, in their daily practice, and talk to me all the time. It's like, oh, I did that process with my client. They were like, they loved it. And yet they're just mainstream psychotherapists or mainstream psychologists, but they were very open. But then I think that I attract really open, conscious people. And it just seems to be that every single person, wherever I speak, whatever place it might be, I think because I feel completely in alignment with my authenticity, I firstly don't really care if somebody doesn't believe me, because it just is what it is, and I don't have any attachment to it. But also I hold the space that everybody remembers who they are. And so whether it's today, tomorrow, next month, or next year, or never in this lifetime, but in another lifetime, I hold the space that they remember who they are. And so I don't really get attached if somebody doesn't follow what I believe. But sometimes it is like changing a religion. So I hear what you're saying, because it is literally like saying to someone, be a different religion. Because it's changing a whole mindset, isn't it?
Absolutely.
When we're using energy and we're using work with guidance, it's literally, the whole mindset has to change, and it's the open possibility that we're connected and we're all one. Well, my goodness, what a responsibility is that then for people? And I know you
Especially
love
if
that.
you're seeing it from the other side. Yes.
So see that bit. So I have many people in my family that are not open to thinking about that their body has a message, or not open to thinking about that we have guides and helpers and an inner guidance. But if you can just be who you're meant to be in the world and be that representation of authenticity, then maybe the seed's planted on some level. And so not to get attached to it, really, I think.
No, I think that is the big piece, is the non-attachment, and the self-value of you are where you're at the right time. And you don't need to be anything else or be anywhere else, and it's like, that's it. And I do think we do attract. For me, it's like, it's I remember when I was at one stage of my practice, probably about 10 years into it, and I had patients coming in saying, oh, I've got this like really intense neck pain, and I've got this and that, and I would like have this like feeling sense, visual flash of like, oh, and I felt like, oh, I know why. And then I thought, well, no, wait a minute here. I'm not going to share what I think, because it's not about me. Let's find out what more they say.
Exactly.
And then I would follow that, and and they would share, do you think it could be from a past life? Do you think? And they would share all this, and then I had never experienced at that point any past life. So I'm like, okay, it doesn't. I said, sure, it could be, because honestly, I don't know, and who am I to judge whether?
Well, exactly. Exactly. So just to be open, isn't it?
It is, and the thing is, that was their experience. So how could it be wrong? Like,
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way, you know. So I then did my work. I continued without negating or inflaming, just allowing the story. And then they would get really clear, like, what's the right word? Signs that they were right, that this is what happened. It was like they got the flashbacks, and then and then they would share, and it's like, wow, this is interesting. But I kept a lot of this to myself because I didn't know how to place it, and I didn't want to, like, the empowerment of the patient is so important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because
You know,
it's not about us. We're not the healer.
It's not exactly,
Yeah.
but as a healer, or, you know, in that journey, you're like, oh my goodness, interesting. Wake up, like, see this, you know. And then when I discovered my own past lives, I went like, oh my God, like, they're such teachers. You know, so it's been a very interesting, you know, process. So
Journey.
It's fascinating to hear, you know, your stand on this, because I think that's so important. You know, it isn't just be who you are wherever you are, you know.
I think it's helped, as I'm sure it has you, but it's helped having the background and the experience of working in a traditional setting, holding a safe space with trauma, etc. I think that really helps. And then to combine it with what we all really know, which is our complete inner knowing. But I think it helps people feel really safe in that space. And so I feel very honoured and blessed that people feel very safe to work with me. And I work just like this. So as we're recording this on Zoom, I work all over the world exactly like this. So it really, you know, I don't have practices anymore. Just do this. And run groups this way as well. So healing is just energy. So, you know, there's no barrier, is there, with it? And it is just really about knowing and trusting. And I, you know, and it's a hard thing for some people to step onto that path and say, yes, I was abused as a child, or yes, I was, you know, whatever happened to them. But once they can heal it without telling a massive story about it, without needing to say it again and again, which happens in traditional therapy quite often. And that's why I think I worked with vets for so long, because they said, I don't want to be with anyone who asks me to tell them anymore what happened. Just want someone to help me. And so I didn't need to know anything, because I get told it, you know, and it's none of my business anyway. So it's like it's on a need to know basis. Yeah, absolutely. So it's, you know, so basically, you know, I don't remember, you know, I get channeled it, I don't remember it, half of it I don't remember, because I don't need to. And it's not until I see the person in front of me I will remember session, I remember everything we need to know, because it's almost like a video screen that comes in. But yeah, so basically it's about that person's journey, isn't it? And honoring it, you know, as you do, you know, we honor whoever comes into our experience. It's not about a hierarchy. I was saying this to my mentor group tonight before I came on and spoke to you, and they said, thank you for being a teacher. And I said, well, thank you for being a teacher, because it isn't about one being the teacher and one being the student. It's about us all being students and all being teachers, you know. So it's I like to look at it that way, you know, that every client that I work with is actually evolving me and teaching me something about me. So yeah.
Well, that's the openness, right? And the true openness to possibility, right? You have to deeply, well, you don't have to anything, truly. But what I'm trying to say is that it just, once you see or feel that, then I think it happens just that way, you know. More things come your way. So here I have a couple more questions that come to mind. So I have been with a belief and an experience, and I've been doing this 30 years, that some people need to to heal through touch, literally through the body.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And it's a reinforced belief because I've witnessed it over and over. I see about 150 people a week. It doesn't take them long to heal.
Amazing.
3 to 5 sessions. It's extremely gentle what I do. You barely touch. You're not like hands-on like crazy. But I have this idea that we need to use, in that sense, that we need to connect to the body. Now, this is partially based on the gifts I didn't really. I've got all the reasons why this is, and here I'm hearing you, and you're doing work that is on Zoom. Clearly, you don't need to touch. I don't mean emotionally touch, but touch.
Yeah.
You don't need the story, which I agree. I understand that repeating it and all that, you're just gonna, get those loops running like a broken record. So I understand that. So how, like, I guess I'm just, it's interesting to see.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
so, it's my belief. So we all have, our beliefs and wherever they've come from our experience. But it's my belief that it's about connection to source. So our feeling of what you're obviously doing is helping people feel connected to source. And however we do that, and so when I work with addiction or addiction of any kind, it's always the feeling that we are disconnected from source. Okay, so rather than looking at it as I'm suppressing something, or like actually really needing to connect with source, and it's about finding that peace. So what I feel about the body is it's the vehicle that we've chosen to inhabit this beautiful being of light that we are. And so it's when we feel really connected to our mission, to who we are, unconditional love, and we're a work in progress, of course, but when we feel that deep enough connection to who we are, then we don't need anybody else at all around us. Of course, we're sharing the world, and that's beautiful, but we don't actually need anything else. So I suppose the angle that I come at is that when somebody feels that connection, they don't need somebody to kind of do it with them, do you know what I mean, or for them. So that's my belief, that's my feeling about it. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we do need essential touch. We are a physical being, we are having a human experience, and it's interesting because maybe you attract people that need that, which is beautiful, and I attract people vibrationally like that need what I do. And I always believe that. I believe that, we find the vibrational match for what we really need. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think, it's all about alignment, and, and it's interesting because, of course, I've had my belief system questioned clearly, because I invite that at every possibility. But it's I can see that. But I had one of my I was running an online program which was all about listening to your body, and I think how it happened is he had done some reading about the work I do, but he didn't get stuck in it. He thought if he was on the call with me, the work I do will work. So he was, of course, I know. And so it was kind of like, it's like, wow, you had like this major knee issue, and it's really, really functional, physical, it's well in your body. And next call, he says, it's all gone. It left. And it's like, that's it was, it's fascinating, and then I realized, like, wow, this is you know, it's bigger than what I know, or what I know to be true. And I know that, but it's just, you know, again, you learn, you have to be open and vulnerable to whatever comes your way, you know. So it was,
and maybe that's your way forward.
well, absolutely. You know,
it could be, couldn't it?
there are no coincidences ever.
No. And maybe that beautiful soul was showing you, you know, that you know, that we are all one, and so therefore, which, you know, so we're all one, so we're all in this world together as energy beings. And maybe on Atlantis, you know, we walked into healing caves, and that's what we did, and we just did it in 1 second. You know, in that 1 second, we healed our body, in that second, our physical form. And maybe he remembered that. Yeah, exactly.
We don't know. You know. Fascinating. So and so when people see you, because oh my gosh, we've gone very close to the end. So I better so if people want to work with you, since obviously that's available on Zoom, and do you have like things that people could read to find out a little bit about, or
my website?
Or...
Go on to my website, which is susankennard.co.uk.
Okay.
So I'm sure you'll put it at the end, but Susan Kennard, and I'm on all the, you know, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of that. I run online programs. I run self-help programs where somebody can do their work themselves. All sorts of offers. I do a YouTube channel, which is lots of free processes. I'm in the process of writing my book, Awaken the Light, Sparkle to Success. So that's going to be out next year. So we're in 2019, we're recording this right at the end of the year, nearly Christmas. And so in February, that's going to be completed. So that's really exciting. And my podcast, The Spiritual Awakener, will be out next year as well. So it's, there's many ways that people can reach me. But the website is probably the best. And then they can look at all the different services and group calls and individual sessions, and I get interviewed quite a lot on tele summits, you know, spiritual radio shows. So I'm often doing something like that.
Okay. You know, and you do so you have some of the case, like the conditions or cases that people have, so people can go through the experience.
There's testimonials on there. And I mean, just examples are that people say, you know, like they change their relationship. So what happens, they might be in a relationship where they felt that that's all they deserved, and they start doing the inner child work and the work on the trauma and the perceptions of belief, and they literally look at that person in a completely different light, and they're like, oh my goodness, I accepted that for goodness knows how many years. But the other side of it is that as they shift their vibration, so do the people in the family. So quite often, and I have a lady, she's happy for me to talk to about, on my mentor, my spiritual gifts mentor program, which I'm running again in next year as well. And she's on this one, and she said, well, I don't know what you've done with my husband, because he's turned into this man that's supportive and loving and appreciative of my time. And I said, well, that's you. You've shifted your vibration, and you've attracted now a vibrational match that's completely different. So that I love so much. And then when people heal their bodies, of course, it is just beautiful. Or after so many years, stop smoking or stop drinking or stop you know, pornographic, things like that. Any addiction, I love to watch that as well, because I just think they just needed to be connected to source. But those children, they're outside of us saying, I'm not worthy, I couldn't possibly do that. You know, when we heal those parts of us, my goodness, miracles happen, the magic happens, and people set up their own businesses, you know, really stand in alignment with their mission. So those sort of things, you know, for me are just the best thing in the world. You know, I feel like I don't work, basically.
Yeah.
I just have fun and live my mission, live my experience, and attract incredible souls. I mean, incredible people come into my experience and just heal themselves, which is all we want, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you
here and also
Pleasure.
sharing all your knowledge. And I look forward to future conversations.
Yeah, thank you. I invite you on my podcast. Thank you so much. It's been fantastic to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café with Dr. Manon. For more information, go to drmanonbolliger.com.